And what they discovered, these were two people that were in public health, they wanted to find out what were the essential things that could predict how long a person was going to live. And some you will see on the list you think shouldn't be there, and some you go, why aren't they there? But out of, maybe 200 different variables they looked at, they found 7 that were the best predictors of longevity. And so they did some good research for us, and we're going to go through that, and you can actually be a subject of the research, at least for a little short period of time here. And that is that what we're going to do is look at the difference between chronological age, your birthdays, and health age. And this is why some people can be really 80, but they're really 60. And so it's a little gimmick, I realize, but the point is that lifestyle makes all the difference. Now, when you deal with statistics and when you deal with epidemiology, you always deal with a mass group of people. We always deal with hundreds, thousands, sometimes tens of thousands of people. And epidemiology is correct. The unfortunate thing is that, and I've learned this in medicine, whenever you say never or always, you will probably always be wrong, because there's always some case outside of the parameter. Same thing with epidemiology. But if you take 100 people, and if the 100 people don't smoke, the likelihood of them having lung cancer is significantly lower than the group of 100 people that do smoke. Now, do the people who don't smoke ever get lung cancer? The answer is yes. So we're going to use our statistical tools to look at the big picture and apply it to us, even though you're going to go, wait a minute, I do this and this and this, or my father or mother did this and this and this, and they only made it to a certain age, or this person did this and this and this, and they're 99. He drinks too much scotch every night, and he still made it. Well, I don't claim to have all the answers, but what I do claim is that the studies I'm going to be sharing with you are good to apply to ourselves personally, whether you get 10 extra years or 5 extra years or whatever. And then we're going to spend some time on a critical thing, and we're going to get into mental health somewhat because it's so critical. We're going to spend time on what I see as the cause of Alzheimer's disease, how to prevent it, so to speak, how to keep your marbles as long as you want to play the game, okay? Therefore, that's more critical because I see people who you can check their heart, you can check their blood pressure, they even have a good cholesterol level, and they don't recognize you. And that's the painful part, and we probably have that at least in our families. So, back to our study to start with. Looked at 7 characteristics, and I want you to at least keep a mental note. The first characteristic, they found that people who live the longest sleep between 7 to 8 hours a night. No, this isn't a seminar on sleep, but that may be later. They sleep between 7 and 8 hours. People who slept more than 8 hours didn't live as long, and people who sleep less than 7 hours don't live as long. Now you can say, well, I've only slept 4 hours all my life, and I'm 99. Well, see, you could blow a hole in my theory. But the point is, majority of people, the thousands they've tested, here's what they found. Not eating between meals. Now I'm starting to sound like your mother. Or maybe you were the mother that did that to your kids. The point I'm getting at is that that is a significant predictor of longevity, and you probably would never expect that one. But here's what they found. So obviously eating between meals must do something to shorten the lifespan of majority of people that do it. Eat breakfast regular. Therefore we find, and that's the most important meal, and it still sounds like your mother. Maintain proper weight. You probably would expect that one. And proper weight continues to change. But what I would like you to do is not look at the person next to you. Because when we are overweight, what do? We find someone who weighs more than I do and we look good. That's not the point. That's not how you're going to get healthy. The way you get healthy is stop comparing yourself with everybody else and say, what about me? And when you look in the mirror, you go, you sure look different than you're 25. Well, I look different than when I was 25 too. But the point is that if you were at a good weight at age 25, that's about where you stay for the rest of your life. And you go, now he's being mean. No, I'm not. I'm just telling you the reality. And you go, yeah, that would be nice. Well, like I said, it starts up here, doesn't it? If you believe you can never be that, then you will probably never get there. Regular exercise, we'd expect this one. Regular, even by their definition, is only 3 times a week. I don't consider that regular, but that was by their definition. Moderate or no use of alcohol. Obviously, I propose for you, with many other studies, that even small doses of alcohol now have been demonstrated, it decreases your longevity. And the French paradox telling you about their heart disease and their wine consumption had nothing to do with the alcohol. If you will please drink your grape juice, you will be better off than the French study. And of course, not smoking. You would expect that. That shortens lifespan. So, keep in mind you've got 7 here. How many of these 7 did you qualify for? Did you get 3 of them? Did you get 4 of them? You got all 7? Let's take a look. Relation of longevity to health habits. If you're a male, the number of health habits, it'd be 7. You got all good health habits, and you would actually, the percent of dying in the next 9 years would be 5.5%. So out of 100 men, 5.5 of them died. Don't ask me who the half was. No, that's statistics, okay? That was obviously a larger group. Ladies, your percentage of death rate in the next 9 years is 5.3 if you have all of them. But compare that to a person who has between 0 to 3. Look at the difference from 5 to 20% in that group. Incredible. So your lifestyle has a direct bearing on longevity. Now you know I'm going to spend some time talking about Alzheimer's. I don't just want longevity, I want quality. I want to have my brain. I put a lot of value on my brain. I've spent a lot of money on this brain. How many of you have been through school and graduate school and took you years to pay it off? You've spent a lot of money on your brain. Don't mess it up now. And some of you have gotten more life experience. You've got to take care of your brain. No one else is going to take care of it for you. In fact, most markets are going to tell you how to lose your mind. They're going to try to sell you things to help you lose your mind. And believe it or not, some of the prescriptions that some of you are taking, if I went through the list, I'd be showing you that you have brain shrinkage. Some of the most common medications that shrink the brain are your blood pressure medications. And most every American, not every American, probably 30% of America is on a medication that causes shrinking of the brain. We're getting some good rain. So as you go through the list, 6 habits, 5 habits, 4 habits, and down to only having 1 or 3 of those habits. Ladies, look at, in your situation, 12.3 years. The next slide gets more enjoyable. It's going to show you how young you really are. So, for men and for women, pick your age over here. And if I don't have anything that qualifies for your age, then some of you are past 70, and we're just going to give you points for it, okay? Let's look at here. I can't use myself at 50 anymore, but we'll use, that sounds pretty good. So, at 50 years of age, if you have 0 to 2 of those health habits, in other words, I missed 5, I've only got 2 of them, then I'm not 50, I am 72. I have to add 22 years because of my poor health habits. So it's like I was 72 years old as far as my longevity at that point. I'll try to talk loud enough, but I like rain on the roof anyway. If we look at 60 years of age, I would have to add 24 and a half years if I had habits. But let's go across. We want to get to the point where we're not adding. We want to get to the point where we're taking away. So if I'm 50, I would have to get over here to, if I had 6 of those 7 habits, then I would be taking away 5 years, 5.7. So I'm not 50, I'm 43.3 years. Let's take a person who's 70. They come across here, they have 6 of those habits. They're not 70, they're 63.2. And if they have all health habits, they're not 70, they're 52. Sounds pretty good, doesn't it, Selma? It's not just a game I'm trying to play with you. I'm trying to show you that this is the data they used, and by having all health habits, your longevity at 50 50 years old, I would be going back to 36, 35 years because I have the same longevity as a person who has poor health habits being 35 again. So let's turn around the other way. If you're 70, you take away 18, or we expect you to live 18 years longer than a person with poor health habits. That's really what that means. And some of you sitting here this evening are going to prove that. Let me back up. Some of you are already proving that, okay? So, just a little thing to look at, connection with longevity and health habits. Let's go back and review. Are you getting your sleep? Sounds too simple. Doesn't even require a prescription. Doesn't cost you any more whether you sleep or not. You still have to buy a bed, right? Go to a hotel. You wake up in the morning. You walk to the front desk. I only slept 2 hours. Oh, then we'll give you your sleepless discount. You only pay 20% of your hotel bill. It has never worked out for me. How about you? Now, you may complain about the bed, and my wife sometimes will even carry her own pillow, and we were laughing this time because the pillows we had in one hotel was we were laying there, and I said, yeah, they almost give you whiplash, because they're full of foam, and they stand about this high, and you sit there with your head and get apnea while you're at it, So sometimes you need to carry your own pillow. Okay, eating between meals. There's no such thing as a good snack. I hear these words like healthy snacks. That's an oxymoron. There's no such thing as a healthy snack because snacking isn't healthy. So I don't care if you eat Bing cherries. They're awesome. In fact, we're getting a good cherry crop. I hope some of you are taking advantage of that this year. But a snack does something for the stomach that ages you much more quickly. Eat breakfast. That shouldn't be too hard on you. But I will tell you how you want a good breakfast. You stop eating the day before so you don't work your stomach all night. So when you wake up in the morning, you go, I'm ravished. Now, if you wake up in the morning and you're not hungry for the first 3 or 4 hours, probably sampled too many snacks the night before. Regular exercise, don't need to cover that. Alcohol and smoking, those are the biggies. So, let me go to my next presentation. We're getting a few I want to spend time talking about how you can live in a blue zone. And a blue zone is basically just another word for having a group of people or a larger number of people who live to be over 100 years of age. And we have them, and you can have them in some of the most unique places. This is National Geographic. This is a book by Gary Fraser, one of my professors when I was in school, part of the Adventist Health Study. Here's National Geographic, Secrets of Living Longer. And then here's the man who wrote the Blue Zones, and he listed 4 of them. Well, you can read through there: Okinawa, Sardinia, Costa Rica, and Loma Linda. Well, I'm going to tell you about Loma Linda. When I was at Loma Linda, I was looking forward to leaving. Not because I hated school, because I hated smog. So you can't claim clean air as that attribute for what they had, because they didn't have clean air. And they're saying when I was at school there, and it's supposed to have cleaned up since I left. I hope it has since in the 70s. But if you can't see it, don't breathe it. Now that was obviously a joke, but I have climbing the mountains around there. It's as close as I can probably relate to a person with emphysema, because you're hiking in the mountains and your lungs start to get tight, they start to burn, and you can't breathe as well, and you say, I sure hope this goes away. And that's just hiking, and I wasn't smoking a cigarette, by the way. Smog is a very detrimental thing, and even in a place that I consider polluted, they got considered a blue zone. The percentage of people that live over 100 years of age there is incredible. We're going to take a look at Okinawa later, and we're going to take a look at their diet. We're going to spend our time looking at the group in Loma Linda. Obviously, that's my alma mater, and we'll take a look at the school. Here we have a variety of countries, how long people live, and what zones they're in. So here we have the country over here: Australia, Canada, Germany, Hungary, Japan, Sweden, United States, and United Kingdom. It says percentage of males surviving. So if you're age 65, then the percentage of males, percentage here, you've got 74% of the males in Australia have made it to 65. So what do you have? 25% who haven't made it to 65. So let's take a look at Canada. We have 75%, Germany 73%, Hungary only 60% of the males make it to 65. Japan, 80% of the males, almost 81% make it to 65. Sweden, 78%, United Kingdom and United States. Here is the group that we're studying. The California Adventist, 86.7% made it to 65. These are the blue zone down here. And the vegetarians of this group here, 89.2%, almost 90% of the people made it to 65. Now, even though they live in an area that I consider polluted, their track record exceeds every other country in the whole place, except one thing. They live in this country right here. So see the difference between this number and this number? It's over 17 years. So we need to check out these blue zones and figure out what they're doing. Now, if you take it to age 85, what percentage are still here? Can you believe that number? We have almost 50% of the people living in the blue zone that have made it to 85. It gets more incredible as we get older, doesn't it? My brother-in-law wrote me a note. It was near my birthday. He says, "Are you this age?" He said, "Are you 64?" I wrote back, 66. And he wrote back to me. He said, "I heard that birthdays are good for you." I said, "Okay." He said, "The more you have, the longer you live." And I go, "That was brilliant." So obviously he didn't have to send me a funny card. He just does it on the phone now, save yourself the postage. Ladies, let's see how you do. First thing I want you to notice is, have you noticed the difference, men, how long the ladies live? So ladies, the same country, from 74 to 86. Men, that's 12 years on us, so we have to do some cleaner living or better living. Come down the list, you see up to age 65, in their 60, in their 80s here, 80%, almost 80%, 89% in Japan, that's almost 90%. Sweden, United Kingdom, United States. Let's look at our blue zone. We got 89.3 and 94.1. 94% of the ladies are still alive at 65. Let's go to age 85, and we come down here. You see the countries. Let's look at Japan. They're doing quite well. 41%, 39%. United States, 39%. Here's the total Adventist health study, and the vegetarians, 61% are alive at 85. And believe me, it's true. You will see more old ladies riding around in their old Cadillacs in that town probably than about any other town. They might be pink, but they still are riding around in their... And they only have 20,000 miles on them, so that's the kind of car I want to buy too, right? Adventists have demonstrated that 5 simple habits Adventists have promote for over 100 years extend their lives. Let's take a look at what these are. Number 1, by the way, folks, this is meant to be a really simple lecture, because most things when it comes to health are simple. The hard part is changing your thinking, not changing your activity. It's arguing with yourself you don't need to exercise today. It's saying, I don't want to drink so much water because I have to go to the bathroom so much. Well, that's obvious. Obviously, put something in. You're not a Barbie doll, but it's in one end and out the other. So that's normal. But why is that normal? Because water is a cleanser. You want to keep all that dirty water on the inside? How many of you keep your bath water for 3 weeks? No, I think you let it down the drain, don't you? Well, this isn't too hard. Eating a plant-based diet. First habit, regular exercise. By the way, if Southern California wasn't crowded, I'd say you all should move to San Diego. It's between 60 to 80 degrees year-round. Avocados grow almost wild there, folks. But the reason I'm in North Carolina is because it's crowded and it's got too much crime, and I still like green. Out there it's a little more brown because they have to water everything. But as far as climate, it's hard to beat. So regular exercise is actually easier there, outdoor I mean. When I was first out of school, we lived about 6.5 miles from the clinic that I worked at. We had one vehicle. My vehicle was my bicycle. And probably only 2 days out of that whole year, I got wet. And that was coming home, and I didn't have to present myself all wet all day. But I rode a bike that much. And by the way, that was really good as much for my mind as for my exercise, because it doesn't matter how the day went. After you rode 6.5 miles to get home, the day was better. And my wife probably appreciated it too, because I didn't have to worry about telling her about what was wrong. I was too tired. Not really. Really, on the level, folks, 6.5 miles is a piece of cake. In fact, I could almost make it as quick as I could drive it. I could drive it in probably, 15 minutes, 15 minutes, and I could ride it in probably 25 minutes. Eating small amounts of nuts regularly. Nuts are actually good for you, except one exception to the rule. And that is, if you're trying to lose weight, they do have a lot of fuel, but sometimes even small amounts can even help you with that. And some of you have been to me long enough to know that if a person comes to me and they are having angina, they walk up the steps to my office and they come in there huffing and puffing and say, it's hurting. I'm saying, just sit down, then we don't give you nuts. But beyond that, as a preventive measure, nuts are excellent for you. In fact, out of the big ones they've chosen, they could have chosen 100 of different factors. This is the top 5, and nuts is on this list. Maintaining normal body weight. Now, remember, weight is a number on the scale. I realize that. But what I'm really talking about here is the right amount of fat and the right amount of muscle. If you're a football player, you may weigh 275 and be in perfect weight balance. New York life tables will probably charge you too much for your life insurance, but you can be in great shape. Muscle does not penalize your health. So when I say ideal weight here, I'm basically saying ideal amount of fat to muscle ratio. That's what we're going by. And so when people ask me, what should I weigh? It's not always an easy answer, because I don't know. But what I do know is that when my waist is the same size it was when I'm 25, that's a good tip for starters. And so we do the waist to height ratio and those type of things. If you want to get fancy, you can go to the gym and they probably will have a way of checking your body fat. They can do a caliper test, pinch an inch. They can do an impedance test. You grab a hold of this stick with metal rings on it, and it runs electrical current through your body. And depending on how much that electrical current comes from one hand and back through the other one, they can give you a rough rule for a percentage of body fat. It doesn't work on the top end if you're really heavy, and it doesn't work for you that are really, really petite and skinny. So it works for most of us, though. Not smoking. Well, you expected that one, especially in Southern California. You see, smoking is what causes the asbestosis that the mechanic has breathed from changing your brakes his whole career to be 10 times worse. The people that get asbestosis, the people that get fiberglass in their lungs, the people that get a variety of lung issues, they always should tell you that this person smoked for 30 years and the guy next to him who didn't worked in the same environment and not near as bad off. So, if we look at the variables and we look at the effects individually, we'll be able to weight which variable seems to be the most significant. So vegetarianism, for men, it increased their life expectancy almost 2.4 years. So that'd be a good tip. Now remember who you're comparing yourself to. You're already comparing yourself to a group of people who live in the blue zone who already have longevity. This is not comparing this group with the general population. This is comparing this group and saying, what are you doing here? Vigorous exercise. Well, for ladies, vegetarianism was less significant, but still significant. Vigorous exercise, 2.14, 2.19. So ladies, vigorous exercise seems to give you a little bit jump on longevity. Nut consumption, 2.8 and 1.8. So guys, you can go nuts. So you do better eating more nuts than the lady. Both groups get an advantage, though. Avoid high BMI, body mass index. So trying to get a grip on are you at the right amount of weight to height ratio. For men, it was 1.5 years. For ladies, it's more important. You got almost 2 years, 1.9. Never smoked, 1.33. Personally, I would expect a lot more than that. But I also know something else. It says never smoked. There are people that live in blue zones that smoked from when they were age 20 to 30 that have changed their life and they're there. So that's why they say never smoked here. I would expect a much greater gap. But remember, I'm comparing people against other people in the blue zone who very few of them smoked to start with. Ladies, you get a little larger advantage. Now, if you want to find out the total advantage, what do you have to do? Well, you're going to add these up, okay? So, the best lifestyle, converse lifestyle, and the difference, okay? Now, when they say the best lifestyle, we're talking about the blue zone rules we just went through. 87 for men, 88.5 for ladies. So ladies still outlive us. Converse, general, the same group of people in that area. This will be compared to the general population. Then they are going to be 76.2 and 79.8. The difference for men, we get a little bit of advantage, 10.8 years and 8.7 years. So that's why you've been hearing, and whether you're cooking school or whether material you're getting, living 10 extra years. That's where this all comes from. Say a little bit different, life expectancy at age 30, how much longer do you expect to live? Californians in general, age 30, we expect them to live to age 73.9. Women, age 30, almost add 50 years, you get to 80. California Adventist, 51 and 53. Vegetarians, 53.3 and 55. Extra years, you can see how it works out here. The vegetarians, 9.4 versus 7.3. What am I trying to say? Even if you live in a blue zone and you follow some of the health habits, the people who follow the most health habits, this whole group is basically non-smoking. But the vegetarians are this. Now, there's one thing I don't have for you. It'll come a little bit later. A vegetarian, by definition, means they do not eat animal tissue, meat. They eat animal products. You can still be a vegetarian and use butter. You can still be a vegetarian and use eggs. You can still be a vegetarian and drink cow's milk. We call those lacto-ovo vegetarians. So I don't have vegan on this list because that means that's the person who chooses to not eat animal or animal products by definition. And all these paleo and all these other diets, and they even have people that are called vegetarian and they eat fish. I'm sorry, you really are pushing the definition a little bit, but that's okay as long as we know what we're talking about. So the vegetarian Adventist, 9.4, 6.3 years. So how are we going to do this? Well, we already covered the first one. A lacto milk Ovo, egg vegetarian, is high lacto and low lacto, and sometimes, obviously, people use all varying amounts. Fish eating, we have the pesco, okay. I don't consider that a vegetarian. But then number 3 really gets your attention. You can eat a rotten diet and be a vegan. I don't mean fermented foods. I'm talking about a poor diet. I should have used a different word. You can eat a poor diet. Let me ask you a question. Is sugar vegan? We've got a real problem already, don't we? Is my fried potato vegan? If you use a vegan oil, which could be corn oil, olive oil, of course it is. It's easy. So I can have French fries every day and be considered a vegan. I can eat all the potato chips I want and be considered vegan. I can eat all the candy I want and be considered vegan. You see what I'm saying? You can be a vegan and be totally unhealthy. But maybe you like the label. I don't know. What I'm trying to get at is don't be an unhealthy vegan. High and low processed food vegetarians. That's the difference between a good, healthy vegetarian and a vegetarian that isn't healthy. How highly processed the foods you're eating. So now what we do is, these labels keep getting longer. Now it's whole food, okay, no processing. So now we've got whole foods, which means they're not processed, plant-based, so now we know it's just it's just vegetable and comes from vegetation. So by the time we get done, before this world is going to come to a conclusion, you may have to have a label this long to describe yourself. Whole food, plant-based. What's going to be the next 3 or 4 words? I don't know. I'm being facetious, but the point is that this is a high and low processed food vegetarians. Then we have the soy and the non-soy. You see what this is getting? I haven't got gluten on here. We've got vegans and we've got fruitarians. So the bottom line is, if you eat plant-based, because of the problems we have with a animal-based protein, then you're going to be better off. We know that. So whatever label you want to give yourself, please enjoy it. Vegan, no in the beef, no in the poultry and fish, and no in the dairy. So this is just a slide saying that. But the reason I show you this slide is I want to show you the percentage of people in the study that I'm giving you that are vegan. 8% of that whole study is vegan. 28% are lacto-ovo-vegetarian. So if we add these two together in the vegetarian group, we'd have 28 and 8, so it would be 36 people. So 1/3 of the people in that group are vegetarian. 2/3 of the people in that group are not, and they still have that good of data that I'm showing you. That's what gets amazing. The PESCO, 9.9, semi and non-vegetarian is the largest group. This is academic. I'm going past this because we want to get down to practicalities. So, percentages of dying from the named causes on the average ages and those fatal events. Now let me say something. Even being a vegan, you don't live forever. I'm sorry. I don't know how to do that yet. So I'm not here trying to convince you can make it to 120. I would like to be 120 if I still have my faculties. Otherwise, it's not worth much. But take a look at this. This is the cause of death. This is in men now. We're dealing with males here for a minute. Here's all Californians, and here's our Adventists. Now, in the Adventist group, I already showed you that only 8% are vegan, and almost 50% are meat eaters. So keep that in mind, because we get better data even when we only have a population that follows these rules. So, diseases of the heart, I realize that's a broad category. All Californians, 39% of all Californians die, this is the death rate, of diseases of the heart, and their average age they die is at 75. Let's keep going. All the Adventists in this study I'm talking about, the percentage that die from heart diseases is higher than the general population. You go, oh no. What do we do that? Well, 39 to 40, we're not going to, and you see it's got none of these little yellow pluses beside there. That means those numbers are not statistically significant. In other words, there's no big difference. We don't call that a difference. But the point I want to show you, do you notice this happens at 75 years, and these people live to 83. Now here's the point. If I have heart disease at 83 instead of 75, is that good? No, it's not good. But if I've got my mind and I've got 8 extra years and I can do something with it, then it's worthwhile. By the way, this data doesn't lie. We're not trying to make a better story or a worse story, so that's why you see this slide. Please do not be distraught. Here's cancer, 23.4%. The average age of cancer death is 71. 19% less cancer, and the average age is another 6 or 7 years. I don't know how to get you off this planet and not die of something. The goal of this lecture is so that you have good quality life, good quality thinking, and have the energy you want until what I hope will happen to me is I go to sleep and not wake up. I don't like the concept of spending my last 2 weeks of life in a hospital with more tubes that I could even figure out where they all come from and what they're putting in me. That's not quality. Stroke, 6%. At age 79, 8% a little higher, but it's at age 85. The whole point of this slide is that they have diseases very similar to the general population at a much later age. That's the whole goal. Effective meat, they found out that when we looked at cancer risk, colon cancer, if you never eat meat, if you eat meat once a week or more than once a week, you can see every step we go up. From 1, almost doubles if we eat it every day. Prostate, ovary, and ovary again, depending on postmenopausal. Here we have, in this situation here. So the amount of death rate, and by the way, this is not death rate, this is risk of different cancers. If we look at total meat intake and colon, never eat it, once a week and twice a week. It's almost a stair-step effect. Red meat, intake increases colon cancer among those who eat white meat. Okay. Now here's one that we found out that hopefully should shake a few people up. Red meat intake and risk of colon cancer among those who eat white meat less than once per week. So they're obviously saying this is dominant red meat consumption. They never eat it once a week, more than once a week. Look at this. White meat intake and risk of colon cancer among those who eat red meat less. So all these people that have shifted away from red meat to now they're eating a white meat and they feel this is so healthy for them. Do you see the slides already? From never to 3.5 times almost. Let's go back. From never to a little bit less than twice. So what does this tell you? This is information that is totally shocking. Most people believe that by getting rid of my red meat and eating only fish and chicken, that that's healthy. Sorry. What this demonstrates is that the people who eat red meat have less colon cancer than the people that eat the white meat. And until you have data and information, most of you, if I ask you that question, do you think that fish is healthier for you than beef? Almost everyone in this room would say, I think fish is healthier. Well, we've been brainwashed. And we think that, but we have no data to back it up. So now we're backing it up. Meat consumption and cancer and meal frequency. Never eating meat, they set those people equal to 1. Eating meat less than once a week, more than once a week, you can see the variables here. So meal frequency, the more they eat, obviously, the higher their risk of having cancer. Oh, I'm going to show you, look at the bottom here. Bladder cancer was almost 2.5 times the risk when you have meat frequency more than once a week. Soy milk, got a bad reputation. You shouldn't have soy. Soy causes cancer. I've read all these dirty articles too. I'm going, what are they talking about? Have they forgot about Japan? Have they forgot about other Asian culture? I mean, what are these people saying? Because I hear the same thing you do, that soy is bad for you. Take a look at this. Soy foods, it reduces cholesterol. Might save you from being on your statin drug. Number 2, isoflavone, the phytoestrogens, the genistein, diazidine, and equol, basically your isoflavonoids are what causes the beneficial effect. They go, no, soy does not cause breast cancer. Soy actually protects ladies from breast cancer. May affect the risk of cancers, of heart disease. The American Adventists consume a great deal of soy as a non-meat protein. Let's go on.
If you have Hashimoto's or some kind of thyroid disease,
Mm-hmm.
I understand that soy is goitrogenic. So does what you're saying also apply to people that have thyroid disease?
The question is about Hashimoto's thyroiditis, and I will say this, that majority of foods, whether it be your cruciferous and things they tell you, cabbage and things they tell you to stay away from, as far as affecting the thyroid, has about this much effect. It is minuscule. I don't even bother people with it. Now, on the other hand, if you were juicing cabbage a couple of heads a day and drinking a cup or two of cabbage juice and concentrating that much, I would tell you, please don't do that if you know you got a thyroid issue. But soy and thyroid is a very minimal difference. I'm much more worried about your exercise. I'm much more worried about how many hours of sleep you get. I'm much more worried about your animal protein intake. So they're picking at straws here for me to worry about it. But I want to show you relative risk of prostate cancer. Okay, men. Relative risk of prostate cancer by intake of soy milk. So if soy milk increased men's prostate cancer, then the more they drink, the higher it should go. Dose relationship. The more I drink, the more problem I have. Look what happens. The men who never drink soy milk, they set them equal to 1. The men who drink it daily went down. Well, I guess less than daily. Once per day and twice per day. The men who drank soy milk 2 times a day had 1/3 the prostate problem that the ones who didn't drink it. So from a slide like that and data like that, there's something in that soy milk who's decreasing the risk of men's problems. So I want to listen to what they have to say. Tomatoes and cancer. Okay, you've heard of lycopene, good for your eyes and good for your macula, and et cetera, et cetera. But we're looking at a total diet. Tomato frequency, how often do you eat it? Once again, we're looking at the cancer site, prostate as well as ovary. If you eat tomatoes less than once a week, they set your risk equal to 1. If you eat tomatoes 1 to 4 times a week, if the risk went up, you would say tomatoes are the problem. Tomatoes give cancer. No, the opposite. Tomatoes reduce your risk of cancer. 1, it dropped down over 1/3. This dropped down about at least 1/4. 5 times a week, it drops lower. And these p-values mean it's statistically significant. In other words, yes, this is valid data. So we find that tomatoes, so we learned something. We've learned that soy foods aren't as bad as what we've been told. But I'm going to be fair, because the research is not being fair. When they research and say soy products do this or soy does that, you have to read the small print. It is true that isolated soy protein and soy protein concentrate are 2 things you don't want on your label that you're eating. Those do have a negative effect. We're not talking about soy milk. We're not talking about tofu. We're not talking about entamames, what we call the fresh soybeans. No problem. As long as man doesn't mess up the soy, we're okay. So back to our chart. The ovarian cancer with tomato frequency, the ladies who had tomatoes almost daily, greater than 5 times a week, had 1/3 the ovarian cancer than the group who didn't eat tomatoes. I think I'll put that on the shopping list. And this time of the year, you may even be getting some that you can pick right off your own clans. How about fruit and cancer? Well, let's look at the data again. We're looking at ovarian cancer, pancreas, prostate, and lung. You go, wait a minute, lung is due to smoking. How are fruits going to help that? Well, let's take a look. All fruits, they didn't pick out any particular ones here, all fruits, this is the frequency, and it says risk ratios. So if you eat fruit less than 5 times a week, you are 1. If you eat fruit daily, which would be 7 times a week, look what happened. It went up slightly until you ate 2 a day, and then it dropped down significantly. So what's the take-home message? You want at least 2 servings of fruit a day to benefit or to get the maximum benefit from what we're talking about here. How about the pancreas? Pancreatic cancer, that was, I can't remember, well, I've been in practice 40 years. The first 10 or 15 years, I can't remember seeing 1 case of pancreatic cancer. It's not that it wasn't there, it was a very low percentage. In the last 5 years, I don't know what's going on, folks, but it's escalating. Maybe I'm getting more older people. Maybe I'm getting old. I don't know, but I don't think it's just me. I think we are seeing a much greater percentage of of pancreatic cancer in our culture. So look at this. The type of fruit that they said, okay, we're going to evaluate the people that get pancreatic cancer with their dried fruit, raisins, dates, and other dried fruit. Those who eat these less than once a month as compared to greater than 3 in a week, look at that. 1, and that would be about 20% or an 80% decrease. That's phenomenal. How about prostate? They did the same thing. Raisins, dates, and other dried fruit. 1, and it went up if you only do it this much a week. If you do it 5 times a week, so therefore put them in your oatmeal, you can get almost half the risk. How about lung? All fruits, if you have them less than 3 times a week, your ratio was 1. The group that ate them almost daily, 3 to 7 times a week or daily here, look at their drop in lung cancer. Now let's be fair. How many people in this group were smokers? Probably very few. But if you can still reduce your risk of lung cancer by 1/3 by eating some dates and some other dried fruit, assuming you're not diabetic, what an awesome thing. Meat seems to be one of the villains associated with coronary heart disease, colon cancer, bladder cancer, ovarian cancer, and the shock in this study came out demonstrating that white meat was a much more significant problem than the red meat. Here's the problem with science. Problem with medical training too. When I went through training, it was all about heart disease. Heart disease, heart disease. What do we do? How do we lower cholesterol? What are we going to do for these people? We're having this epidemic and we're losing, 600,000 people a year are dying of a heart attack. Back then, cancer was probably 150,000. That's still significant, but not compared to this biggie. Now we watch that ratio continue to change until now cancer is outrunning heart disease in certain age populations. Back to this. Coronary heart disease is associated with meat consumption, specifically red meat. So if we're only looking at one area, just coronary heart disease, red meat is more of a villain than white meat. But if you're looking at the whole person, take the whole picture, that's what we're trying to look at here. White meat is worse for us now than even red meat. Now, don't leave here, and I'm not recommending you go out and have a steak on the way home, okay? What I'm recommending is you consider that you can live without animal protein. That's what I'd like you to really be considering. And if you've been keeping up with the news, then you know that they've got products out now that are just almost ridiculous. They have got imitation meat going on a large scale, not for vegans, folks, but they're trying to get the guy who lives in Texas and wants a 12-ounce steak to actually consider something else. These steaks bleed, folks, and there's not a bit of meat in them. And if you wanted to make a good investment, that was a good one on the stock market, because if you saw what happened. But the point is, that's how far we have come. We have companies that are not targeting vegans and vegetarians. They are targeting the average Joe, so to speak, out there. And they've got meat products. And the person to ask is a person who really is a steak connoisseur. How do you like this? And they're passing the test. It's incredible. And they're giving people an alternative. That's not my goal for health. I'm just telling you how far it's come.
Is fish in the same category as chicken, white meat?
Yes, sir. Yeah, yeah. See, that demonstrates that when you deal with the quantity of animal protein per ounce of meat, you get the most amount of protein from fish, not from beef or pork. Because fish have to work for a living, and they swim their whole life, and they don't get fat unless you put them in a tank and feed them. But most fish are lean. They run 5, 8, maybe 10% fat. They run 85 to 90% protein. You're not made to eat that much protein. That's the big problem here. It's not white. You take a beef steak, and you're maybe getting 30% protein from beef. You come over here and take a fish, you can get 80 or 90% protein. And we've been telling you it's been healthy, and we have had wrong information. Conclusion. The studies on Adventists in California suggest that a vegetarian lifestyle reduces the risk of many diseases: coronary artery disease, cancer, obesity, arthritis, diabetes. A few facts. Number one, the Adventist Health Study was the first epidemiologic study to determine that men who consume tomatoes and tomato products frequently, importantly, reduced the risk of prostate cancer. Gentlemen, I sure hope you like tomatoes. The next thing, the Adventist Health Study was the first study to demonstrate that eating nuts 5 or more times a week appears to significantly reduce the risk of definite fatal coronary heart disease and definite non-fatal myocardial infarction compared to eating less per week. Similar findings were seen for eating whole wheat bread. Number 3, the study in blue zones that we're talking about here was the first to demonstrate that the intake amounts of water each day may significantly reduce the risk of fatal coronary heart disease. This observation, protection in both males and females, was independent of other risk factors for coronary heart disease. Hydrate, hydrate, hydrate. That's what your body likes. Those who consume a wide variety of fruits, vegetables, seeds, whole grains, and nuts have less disease than those who eat the typical American diet. Vegetarians appear to be at lower risk than omnivores. Now, what's an omnivore? You have an herbivore. That's somebody who eats herbs. Then you have an omnivore, and then you have a carnivore. So an omnivore is halfway in between. They like their meat and they like their vegetables. That's what an omnivore is. Vegetarians to be at a lower risk than omnivores for several fatal diseases: cancer of the colon, breast, and prostate, cardiovascular disease, and diabetes. Vegetarians have more favorable heart disease risk profiles. They have lower blood pressure, lower cholesterol, and lower prevalence of obesity. It's hard to overeat on broccoli, folks. And some of you know me quite well, and some of you have been on various programs that I recommend. And sometimes for a month or two, we start you out on nothing but vegetables. I don't do that to insult you or to torture you. I do that because that is the best way to get from point A to point B before you get discouraged. And when you get on the scale and you're down 3 pounds, you get pretty excited. And then you wake up in the morning and you go, I feel pretty good. And at 8 o'clock at night, you still feel pretty good. And you got to convince yourself you need to get some sleep because your energy is better. You see, when you put the right fuel in the body, it doesn't take as much energy to process it. Animal products are very expensive, not just at the store, but as far as metabolically and what you have to do to process it all. That's why I cannot believe, and I wasn't raised eating liver, but I can't believe that anyone would ever consider eating an organ that processes all the toxins, because then I just give my liver double duty when I take it in and the doctor says I'm anemic. And so I have to have liver. Well, guess what? The best way to get non-anemic is to eat broccoli, not liver. If you eat like the cow, I know I haven't written a book yet. I'm thinking about calling it the cow diet or something. I mean, look at it. You watch cows and what do? And they build bodies that are 800, 900 pounds, and then you go buy the cow so you can eat the cow. But what did the cow eat? Grass. And more grass. Yeah, you may not want to eat 15 bushels a day, but anyway. Number 7, cancer risk may be lower because of several factors. Here's their opinion. The emphasis there is may, but I believe they're correct. Increase plant sterol cholesterol ratio in the diet. Okay? When you increase plant sterols, you automatically lower the cholesterol level and change the ratio. Here's the point. When they wrote this one, they were assuming the whole blue zone population. That means someone who eats steak and someone who doesn't. That's why they use the word cholesterol. There is no cholesterol in avocados. There's no cholesterol in your nuts. There's no cholesterol in your beans. There's no cholesterol. By the way, there's only cholesterol in animal-based products, okay? So, number 2, or B, decrease primary and secondary bile acid ratio. We're getting a little bit complicated here, okay? We're talking about what your body is getting rid of. Your liver processes all kinds of toxins, poisons, etc., etc. It puts out bile. Bile is stored in your gallbladder, and any organ that concentrates anything in your body is much more likely to have stones. That's why you have gallstones or kidney stones. So when you get the bile is processed, it is an emulsifier. The function of bile in digestion is to break down fat, make it water soluble so you can absorb it. Everything in the body has to work on water soluble. We don't absorb fats well. We have to break them down. So that's what they're saying here. Decrease primary and secondary bile ratio. The only way you get rid of cholesterol out of your body is the liver puts it out into the bile. The bile comes out into your small intestine. And at that point, you've got to have something to bind with it. Plant sterols, bioflavonoids, plant fiber, water-soluble fiber bind with the cholesterol, and then you can eliminate it. So when they say a decrease of primary and secondary ratio, what we're talking about is that your diet has a direct impact on what comes out of the liver. Eat a meat-based diet, you'll have different type of bile. I don't have slides here, but I'd like to show you the difference between gallbladder in a vegetarian and gallbladder in a meat eater, and how many vegetarians have gallstones and how many don't. You'd be surprised in that data. Favorable dietary factors including more fiber and less fat. The oldest person in this study, in the blue zone, was Lydia here. She's 112, and she doesn't look too bad. The interesting thing about Lydia is that she has a daughter. And when your daughter gets to be 90, you're doing pretty good. Here's Lydia. Here's Marguerite. So when you have a 90-year-old daughter, you come and see me, and I'll take your advice, okay? How's that? Is that fair? And then here's Marge at 101 looking at the National Geographic. So let's take a few minutes to open up for questions. Stand up, stretch a leg, and I'll do my best. Looks like we've had our afternoon shower, and we save you from watering the yard, and we're in good shape. Yes, Selma?
Yes. Number one, how can you get,
We want to be able to hear it. It's for my benefit, too.
how how can you get enough protein from vegetables? You know, how much do you have to eat to get the protein that you need? Say, I need, let's see, I was told, say up to 35 grams of protein a day, okay? How do I get that? And I haven't started counting the protein in all the vegetables that I eat, but you eat I cut out all my chicken and all my fish, and I only eat the vegetables, fruits, and grains, right? And can I get 35 out of a normal portion of these 3 times a day?
It's
have
actually a very
with that, I
easy
have
question.
wait,
How,
with that, I also want to ask, because it would be part of it also, all of these things are loaded with potassium. Now, what happens if you're told that you've got too much potassium?
well, quite the contrary. Potassium is the mineral you want, and we Americans get too much sodium. So if you look at nature, what do you find? You find foods that are high potassium, low sodium. Even celery is going to have more potassium than sodium. Now you look at what man does, what do? We reverse the ratio. We have high salt and low potassium. So we've got it wrong. So what do I do to most people? I want to lower your blood pressure. I want to decrease your calcium buildup in your aorta. I've got to take away these things that are inflammatory. If you've worked much with salt, sodium, you realize that sodium can burn your skin as effective as any aspirin. It is a highly irritating chemical. That doesn't mean you don't need any of it. Now, in your bloodstream, notice this. In your bloodstream, your sodium is high and your potassium is low. Your sodium may be 140. Your potassium may be 5. You didn't ask the right question. The right question is, what is it in the cell? In the cell, your potassium is the high one and the sodium is the low one. So if you want to feed your cells properly, you want to be on a high potassium diet. And the only time, and it hurts me greatly, is you have to drop potassium in people when they're in renal failure. And that's a hard disease, because the good food you like to feed someone to help out their kidneys, when the kidneys can't filter potassium, it can become toxic to you. But a good functioning kidney on a vegetarian diet is going to last a whole lot longer than with your fish and your chicken, whatever. Now back to your protein. You believe that protein comes from animals. It does. You take this piece of chicken, take it to the laboratory, and say how many grams of protein. They'll say it has this many grams of protein. Did you ever stop to ask where that protein came from? Where does the cow get her protein from? Eating grass. Protein is never made by an animal. It can only be consumed. So all protein comes from being vegetarian. There has to be some vegetarian in the food chain to get the big fish over here. The little fish has got to eat the plankton that's eaten by the bigger fish, and we happen to be the biggest fish in this food chain. So first you have to dislodge from your mind that you need protein. Because every food has got more protein. If you only had nothing but carrots or potatoes or cabbage or whatever to eat, you'd get plenty of protein if you eat enough to maintain normal weight. It is impossible to be low protein and maintain normal weight unless you eat junk food. When you drink your donut, have your donut and you drink your Mountain Dew, which you don't, I don't have to worry about you. The other thing we've gotten confused on is the quantity of protein we need. I've showed slides here before. The World Health Organization recommends 37 grams a day. If you and I went to a country, if Ethiopia was starving, we went there, our goal would be to get their population up to that level by way of food. I also showed slides here about the diet in China. And I showed that the average diet in China has about 70 grams of protein a day, twice what they need, and they eat nothing but vegetables and rice and some beans and that. So when I ask a vegetarian, where do you get your protein from? They say, well, I eat nuts and seeds, and I eat my beans. And I smile because I'm going, yes, there's protein there. But do you know you get most of your protein from your grains and your vegetables, not from your nuts, not from your seeds. So even vegetarians are confused on this issue. So back to you again. We don't have a protein malnutrition scenario in this country. It just does not exist unless a person's living on Twinkies. It just doesn't exist. So when you go through the data, I don't have to worry. I have never had a patient with low protein levels being a vegetarian without kidney problems where they're just losing their protein. It just doesn't exist. I haven't seen it in my career yet. So I'm coming to an assumption that the data that I'm reading and looking at and seeing is correct. So we're back to the cow diet. And the amazing thing is, the more broccoli you eat, the more weight you lose, and you go, this is a pretty good deal. Almost as good as the Dr. Atkins diet. The more meat you eat, the more you lose, except this is a lot better for your heart. Susan's got the microphone if you'd like to ask a question. Raise your hand and she'll get to you if there's any questions. Lady, go ahead.
Dr. Collins, on TV and radio, I'm hearing a lot about, it's called super beets. Are you familiar with that at all?
Super what?
Beets. Beets.
B?
Beets.
Beets. I'm not familiar with what makes a super one better than a regular one, but I mean.
Well, they're trying to push this and sell you this product that's supposed to be great for you because it's made of beets. So.
Well, look at the nourishment in beets, okay? I treat a lot of stomach problems, so I get betaine HCl. I get hydrochloric acid that helps to digest my food. That's automatically in the beet. If you look at the quantity of iron that's in a beet, anything that's that color is going to be a good source of iron, plus all your other micronutrients. And that's why some people don't like beets. They say they taste like the earth. Well, that earthy taste is a good source of minerals. So from a dietary standpoint, it is absolutely rich in nutrients. But as far as the super beet thing, I mean, I've heard of beet powder. I've heard of people doing these. Some people shred them raw in their salads. Some people have them steamed. If you're from where I am in Pennsylvania, they pickle them up there. They soak them in lemon juice overnight, and they get pretty good. But the point I'm getting at is that beets are a good food. I'm not sure specifically if they've created one that's higher in sweeten. I mean, you've got sugar beets, and we get our sugar from that. I'm not sure what they're talking about.
Neither am I.
But at the same time, if you enjoy beets, you're getting a good food. And if you get them fresh, don't forget the tops. The tops are as good as eating as the bottom. So, you know. There's a hand, this lady right here.
I believe you said something about blood pressure medicine.
Yes.
Could you say something more about that?
Sure. The context I was talking about blood pressure medicine, I told you kind of where we're going to go this afternoon, and I want to spend time talking about not just taking care of your heart and your pancreas and your ovaries. We've got to take care of our mind, and that's part of longevity and health. And since Alzheimer's is such a major topic, and by the way, it's a major problem. It is not decreasing all the medications, et cetera, we aren't even touching it. In that context of trying to take care of our brains is what the context I was talking about. We have demonstrated that a person who has high blood pressure that uses prescription, as in pharmaceutical drugs, to normalize that blood pressure, we see more brain shrinkage in those individuals by MRI analysis where we take the pictures. We see more brain shrinkage in those individuals than a person who controls their blood pressure through diet and lifestyle. So my whole goal is that it's not that I don't see anybody that's got high blood pressure. What I want to encourage them is that they do everything they can in their lifestyle to deal with their blood pressure, not depend on the pill and not depend on a medication to try to normalize their blood pressure. The fallacy is I go to the doctor, my blood pressure's 170 over 110. He goes, you have high blood pressure. I said, obvious. He said, I want you to take this pill. So I take the pill, I go back for my monthly visit. It's down at 140 over 90. He says, you're doing good, but you need to increase it a little bit. So I increase it a little bit, and I go back, and now I'm 138. He goes, well, you passed the 140 test over 88. He says, you're doing better, but I want it a little better than that. So I get my third increase in my medication, and I'm going, Doc, I haven't changed my life. I'm still just as big around. I haven't done anything, and you expect me to believe that you're making me healthy. He goes, well, your numbers are good. Well, those good numbers don't change the brain shrinkage. That's what I'm talking about. And believe me, if you walk a mile in my shoes and you get the report back from the radiologist who's read the brain scan on someone that basically the brain is so deteriorated and small in there that they're losing function. How do you look at the lab work, look at the report and say, ma'am, I'm sorry you lost your mind? And not tongue-in-cheek, nothing. I'm saying it just isn't there. And the whole story on the whole pharmaceutical concept is not told. If it was told, well, no, it is being told. How many people walk into my office right now and saying, the doctor prescribed this, I read all the side effects, and say, how'd you like this one? This one's called death. And say, they want me to take this medication with all these scripts. I go, yeah. I go, well, I'm not going to do it. I go, well, then what are you going to do? Because you have a problem. Are you willing to change your life? And if they say yes, then we've got something to work on. So I realize I'm biased. I've been in preventive medicine. I feel it's the best option. I believe it's the most cost-effective option. I believe that the healthcare system has got very few years left that it can handle the expense. We can't handle it. We've got a broken system now, and people don't realize it. It's being very much propped up. And the road we're going down, there's no way we can afford this. And it isn't just me saying this. I have physician, lawyer friends that work in high places that say, what you've been doing is what should have been done the whole time. Well, it made me feel good, but we cannot afford it. Our present way of handling is wrong. So that's a long answer to say, please do everything in your lifestyle to correct any blood pressure problem. And remember, always look at the risk to benefit ratio. I'm taking this drug, what risk does the drug have versus the benefit? And I think you'll find sometimes it's better to have your blood pressure at 140/90 than have it corrected on a medication. You'll be healthier and live longer. The reason we're correcting people so much now is because we have some blood pressure medications that have less visible side effects, and they're passing them out. Unfortunately, it doesn't save the mind. And so we have to take the responsibility. Some people have Alzheimer's because of physicians and the way we're treating people medically. I did a lot of things ignorantly. I'm not saying they don't. I'm just saying when we have new knowledge, I think we need to function on it.
I can talk loudly. I just want to know, you talked about the statins as brain shrinking. Are there other classifications of psychotropic drugs or any other kind of pharmaceuticals that you think are so dangerous?
I have personal opinions on a lot of things. I tend not to share my personal opinion. I tend to share data because I expect to base it on someone just than what I think. Otherwise, you might as well go get your ladies magazine. So the data that I'm presenting to you dealt with blood pressure medications and brain shrinkage, not statin drugs, not psychotropic drugs, not antidepressants. I don't doubt that they have an effect. I just have to have data before I feel it's appropriate for me to give it to you. By the way, there's no such thing as a good medication. Now, if your thyroid did not function at all, I consider that a deficiency. You do need some help. If your pancreas has been wiped out by a virus, don't die for not taking your insulin shot. I'm not saying there's not necessities, but most of the time we're over-medicating people as compared to encourage them to change their life. Most medications that people are taking, if they're willing to change their life, they don't need. So. Selma?
Now that we're talking about medication, what about medication given to prevent seizures and epilepsy?
Then
There's
I
a
would...
trileptal, which is one.
There's still lifestyle components that you can do to help to deal with overactive and seizure activity in the brain. But with a brain injury due to an accident or trauma, we all fell off our bicycles or out of the tree, there can be actually brain changes. I'm talking about tissue changes in the brain. And I'd rather have you safe, and that's back to the risk to benefit ratio. If you fall asleep driving your car or have a an epileptic fit and kill 3 people, you couldn't forgive yourself, and they couldn't be around to talk to you about it. So there are, yes, yeah. I'm not anti all medication. I'm anti over medication when a person doesn't want to change their life. Even though I believe that you have every right to take all the medication you want, the problem comes down to is I don't believe that society should pay your medical bill if you don't want to change your life. That's where I draw the line. It's just the way I believe.
You
But
know,
I'm on belief, not research, okay?
With the blood pressure medication, I could say they have me on this blood pressure medication. And while taking that, without taking the Hawthorne, this was a few years ago, I had 2 mini strokes. And I said to the doctor, I said, this medication isn't doing anything for me. I had mini stroke taking your medication. When I start taking the Hawthorne, the blood pressure went down. And I said, you know, this just doesn't make sense. So this says that the medication doesn't do it.
It makes a lot of sense.
Ooh.
Hawthorne's quite effective.
Oh, yeah, oh, very effective.
All the way in the back.
Oh, sorry.
Speak loud, please.
You said that there could be a lifestyle change if you have seizures that were caused from a brain injury.
Correct.
Can you give us an idea of what that lifestyle change should be?
I'll be spending more time talking about inflammatory foods in the next session.
Okay.
So we
That's fine.
basically want to knock out inflammatory foods, and then some people have actually benefited, and this is the only good thing I will tell you about ketogenic. Some people with seizure activity do better on a higher fat diet as compared to medication, because let's face the fact, why does it help? A high fat diet numbs your brain. I don't want my brain numbed, but if I had excessive seizure activity, I would probably go that route as compared to taking phenobarb or something else that I know affects my brain adversely. That's the kind of options. Seizures are a hard one. You picked on a good one to test our theory. Why don't we get up, why don't we get up, stretch your legs. They say you can only handle what the seat of the pants can bear, so stretch your legs and we'll come back and we'll leave time for questions at the end. And I realize I'm not going to be able to cover everything, but that's, we'd be here for a long time, and that's good.